and welcome to the Franchising 360 show. With me, as always, is Danielle Wright.
Hi.
And I am Tim Parmeter, the Franchising 360 show, where we're going to take a complete 360-degree view at franchising. Tonight, we're going to answer last week's question, which was, let's be honest, it's one that's on everybody's mind when they think about owning a franchise. Danielle, how much is this going to cost? Wait, there's money involved?
Yes.
Do I just get the franchise for free?
If you're lucky.
Ooh.
Not really.
Okay.
That's a joke.
Okay.
Like, very rarely are they free. If they're free, sign me up. I want 5 of them.
Right, and probably really run in the opposite direction if they're giving it to you for free. So, but in most things in franchising, and it's not that people are trying to be misleading or like get around the issue, but there's not a direct answer to a lot of things. And how much does it cost? There certainly isn't a direct answer.
Right. So the overall investment level, like you'll see a lot of things online. So I think the viewers have probably at some point or something, hey, buy this franchise for $10,000.
No way. Sign me up again.
$10,000. We could only wish, right?
Yeah.
How often do you have people asking you this question? Like, can I really do it? How much does it cost?
Oh,
what does this look like? I'm really looking for that 7-Eleven, Tim. What does that look like for me?
Yes. somebody a few months ago said, hey, I want to get this Subway. I saw you could get it for $20,000.
Really?
Yes. I'm like, well, that's only part of the investment.
I'd be asking questions like, where'd you see it for $20,000? I want to know.
Right, the teeny tiny version of that, but it kind of goes into when we talk about the investment. There's an enormous range.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
But before we and again, it could be from. It's not 10 grand.
It's never zero.
Right. It's never zero.
Let's agree that it's never zero.
And I think where most people go to, we reference them probably more than we want to on the show already, right? The Golden Arches, right? The Taco Bells.
The Chick-fil-A's.
Right. Oh,
Chick-fil-A's a big one.
That's a whole different thing.
That's a whole nother conversation.
But when we think of McDonald's and Taco Bell and things like that, it's millions of dollars.
And it's food.
For that one.
Right. Food, retail. You're dropping a lot of brands that are very expensive to own.
Right.
Yes.
Because it is kind of where most people's mind goes to with this. So the range can be that high, but let's talk about what goes into when we talk about investment, but really it's total investment. It's kind of 3 things, right?
Okay.
So there's the franchise fee.
Right. Which you pay to get that plan, that business in a box.
Right.
Yeah.
There's the startup cost,
which gets it up and going so that you can, deliver Tim's Sandwich Shop. Right.
And then it is number 3 is the operating capital. And we talked about that a couple weeks ago with the plan.
The rainy day fund.
Right. So let's start with number 1, franchise fee.
Franchise fee.
Why do I have to pay you money to be a franchise owner?
Because we set the franchise and you have to pay us. We built the business, right? So honestly, the franchise fee gives you as an owner access to the trademarks, access to the plan, access to the support. There's an onboarding piece to joining a franchise. I don't just say, hey, I want to own a crumble cookie today and I'm going to start making cookies tomorrow and then collecting dollars on those the day after. That's not really how it works. So the franchise fee is actually your buy-in into being a franchise owner.
Right. And that's one part of the franchise or the total investment. But if we just go back to like some ranges, right? So if we think, again, everybody's going to think about food first, right? Food, so
home service. It's our job on this show to introduce them to other things,
exactly.
For sure.
But food, how much? If we had looked at a range because we've got the big food, we've got the kind of QSR stuff that's in a strip mall. What's maybe a range for that? So
you're asking a very difficult question for me because it can range in a lot of different perspectives, right? Food can be food trucks. So you can get into food for less of a cost. You got a truck, you have a limited menu. So I would tell anyone looking at food in general, like $250 is the lowest. 250 with 3 zeros behind it. Let's be clear.
And that's
north
again
of
that
$1 million.
total investment,
total
right?
investment.
To north of $1 million. Then there's all the retail things that are non-food, right?
Yeah, let's name some of them. What do you like? Let's go.
Right, and really, this is kind of always a good challenge for people.
Yes.
You and I do this all the time,
right?
And if
we
anybody
call
else
franchises in the wild.
If anybody else is in the car with us, I'm sure it's one of the many things we annoy them with, right? Like, ooh, franchise, right?
Yep.
Where we get our hair cut.
Yes, haircut.
Maybe where we ship something.
Right, UPS store.
Right.
Keep going. Let's go.
Trivia. Fitness.
Oh, fitness is big.
Health.
I've got one.
Wellness, what?
Massage Envy, Hand and Stone.
Oh, we're just naming the brand. They got to pay for
H&R
this.
Block.
They got to pay for this stuff.
No, they don't.
We're doing the one all
Well,
right
it's
by our
good.
house,
Yeah,
right? So
right.
all of these different things, so those things don't get as high as food, but
Correct.
usually in that $250,000 to $500,000 range is that total
what is
investment.
the sweet spot for some of your clients, the people that you work with?
I think for retail, it's there, but then we can also get into the non-retail, which is usually all the things that non-retail. We don't need a physical space.
Really, tell me more.
I know I coined that myself. And then there's an office or something like that. But most of the time we have a vehicle that's now going to.
So more of a
that customer.
logistics type of business, a guy in a truck, as we like to say it.
Yes.
Guy in a truck, and you're out on the road and you're rolling through that. Now,
Right.
where does that generally sit?
And I would tell you that can be 200-ish and then less, right?
Okay.
And less is, I mean, again, are there some things under 100,000? Sure there are, but
Yeah.
not that many, right? Or not much below there.
Well, there are. It's just a matter, back to some of the other episodes. What is it you're looking to do?
Right. Do you want a true business? And there's
Right.
going to be a little bit substantial, but it's kind of there. And so that's kind of the range. Let's do this when we come back. Let's
Yeah.
talk about kind of each of those categories, that franchise fee, the startup capital, and then the operating cost,
All
right?
right.
For that and a whole bunch more here on the Franchising 360 show when we come back. Welcome back to the Franchising 360 show. We are talking about everybody's question. How much does it cost me to own a franchise? We talked a little bit about the ranges, and we have the kind of the three things. We've got in that total investment, the franchise fee,
Yes.
the startup cost,
Right.
and the operating capital.
Okay.
The franchise fee, as you mentioned, that's getting us the rights to the brand, right? But come on.
It's the pay to play.
Come on. Are they just like selling me, right? Am I getting anything out of this? Are they just trying to take my money?
Just trying to take your money.
Okay, good. Well, we know that, right? So, but people do kind of think that sometimes,
They do,
right?
right?
But how much goes into, let's say a franchise fee is $50,000,
Okay.
right? Well, does that franchise just take that $50,000 and put it right into their pocket?
No, they don't actually. So
I mean, hardly at all, right?
Right. So when a franchise is setting that franchise fee, like let's go back to the history of it. What is the cost and why do I want to get into it? And all of the pieces that we were talking about as far as the plan. They've made an investment into their business model. They've set up all of the pieces to be able to give you a business model in
Right.
your box, right? And so then there are people that go with you on this journey from, hey, I've signed the agreement, now I've got to do what?
Right.
So not even I know half the time what that looks like. Now, we've been franchise owners, so we know what this is.
Right.
Is they give you a lot of education, a lot of support. And when I mean support, it's, okay, we set you up with the marketing vendors. We set you up with the credit card processors.
Right.
We give you the training. There's always training. So if I were to say, my hourly rate is $100 and you've got 100 hours of training,
Right.
quick math, what
Right.
does that cost?
A lot.
Right.
Right.
So that's where the fee goes to.
It is, right? And it's really a matter of, when you think of that franchise fee, how franchises really make money, and this is a whole nother episode, is
Right.
going to be the royalties, right?
Correct.
So everybody that you are touching and talking to and is helping you before you ever get open,
Correct.
that franchise fee is basically paying all of those people's
Paying
salaries.
the
So they're
people.
usually
Yep.
way in the hole on that,
Yes.
right? But
with the goal that you're going to open a franchise and be what?
successful, right? Which is why they're spending all the time and the effort to get you there, right?
Right.
So we have the franchise fee that's
Yeah.
usually paid at time of the franchise agreement being signed.
Yeah, when you decide, yes, I want to own this business, you
Right.
sign a document, which is a whole nother episode in itself.
Yes.
But then you pay a franchise fee, and then you're off to the races.
Okay, then we need like that startup capital,
Right.
right? So which is going to be every dime spent until we are
Open.
right? So if it is, and it's going to be wildly different if it's retail or non-retail, but maybe give us a couple examples of like retail's easy. I'll tee you up with that one, right? So what are some things that they're going to spend the money on to get open?
Right. So depending upon the vertical, right, the industry, let's use fitness for a second. You
Okay.
don't just go open a Gold's Gym without any gym equipment. So you have to put mirrors on the walls. A lot of times you have to put carpet on the ground, right? You have to buy the equipment.
Right.
You have to have a water fountain. You have to have some retail, right? Like Who doesn't love going in and buy
but we
retail?
need an actual location even before all of that,
Yes.
right? Small point. Right?
Small points.
So, and then all the things there's the empty shell. Now we got to make it look pretty.
You got to build out the shell, right? So it generally gets broken down into construction costs or build out costs. You're going to have an architect or an engineer a lot of the times because the box that you're going into may not necessarily be for you specifically.
Right.
And then again, you have to furnish it, add fixtures, add equipment, all of the pieces.
And you may have to hire some people before you even get started.
There we go back to that pesky labor thing.
So, and then, but that sounds like a lot because
it is a lot.
It is a lot. If it's non-retail,
some of the same things apply, right? Because if you have, like we talked, a guy in a van, you got to buy a van, got to get a guy.
We need a guy for that.
Got to have the van wrapped. Got to do that. You got to go to training. I think I know in franchising, I feel like we don't promote that as much.
Right.
But to your point, I think you've said on numerous occasions, tell us about some of your clients, like most of the time you place people and they have no clue what they're doing.
No.
And so you need to be trained on those 7 spinning plates, on how to be a business owner. Even a lot of times people want to know actually how to do the work, even though I may not do the actual work. Right?
Yep, absolutely. And again, a whole nother episode, but the training side of things, like sometimes you're going to get this checklist that's like a mile-long thing of checklist of things you have to do even before you get open, right? And again,
and that's the plan, right? That's the box.
And not just get the van or wrap the van. It's get the van from this vendor because we're going to get it at a discount typically, right?
Right. So, and that helps in the overall investment level too. So when you're talking about the wide ranges, a lot of times it shows that maybe we're financing some equipment or we're financing a vehicle instead of actually purchasing it. Now, that's something we would tell people. I think you would tell your clients, please speak in. Like what you would tell them is a lot of times you don't want to go and write a check for that. You do want to do the financing option. It's a little different than your personal finances. But what do you see with your clients? What do they typically look for?
Yeah, and again, as always, there's a big range with this, right? But again, sometimes you can finance that just like you would if we go out. Like you just got your son a car here recently, right?
Yeah.
So,
lucky me.
Right, and maybe you just wrote a check for the whole thing.
I wish.
Right. So, but you didn't. So
we're in franchising.
Same thing with this, all on that startup cost. But again, part of that plan, knowing where we can get that,
put it,
right? So let's come back to then the operating capital, right? We get a handle on some of the things that we need to get open. Now that pesky operating capital and what that's about and what that goes for, we're going to hit that up next here on the Franchising 360 show. Welcome back to the Franchising 360 show. Tonight's question we are tackling is how much does it cost? Danielle, we've talked a little bit about, there's the franchise fee. We've talked about the startup money, right? Now we're open day one. One of the things that really I think sets the franchise world apart from the startup is operating capital and making sure franchise owners are at a minimum properly capitalized, if not overly capitalized.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
Because you asked me before, but what's operating capital?
So operating capital is essentially everything. It's paying the bills for the business, right? And so usually So we're not talking profit, how much money I make. Nope, it is.
Okay.
It is, and typically you'll see this in franchising. They're going to say, hey, you need at least 3 months operating capital set aside. Honestly, sometimes I'm going to tell people to bump that up to maybe 6, but it's kind of like sitting. I've got, if we say 6 months, I've got ready to open today.
Okay.
I've got 6 months worth of money to pay all of the bills for the business as if I don't make a dime during that time. Now, don't hyperventilate, right? So you're gonna make money, right? Without giving an earnings claim, you're gonna make money in that time, right? But it is, again, it allows us, like we talked about in the plan a couple weeks ago, allows you to not be cheap on anything from a marketing or labor standpoint.
Okay, so you're not cutting costs and you're not taking from one to the other. So it's just there. Rainy day fund.
Right. If you are going to spend $5,000 a month on marketing, then you want to sit there with 6 months worth, so $30,000
okay, in
your bank account day one, earmarked for marketing. If you know your labor costs are going to be whatever, $5,000 a month for your team, have that money sitting there. So you're not
worried about
robbing,
payroll. Yeah.
Right. You're not robbing good old Peter to pay Paul. Right. So with that, so we talked to obviously the marketing and the labor.
Right.
What are some other things that might go into that kind of operating capital?
Well, you said marketing, we say labor, rent, because you had mentioned retail spaces, right? You got to be able to pay gas in those vehicles for that team.
Right.
I think something I didn't think about until we became business owners and franchise owners, like payroll taxes and such, right? Like you got to have dollars to keep the business going in that fashion because you need people doing stuff, right? So flipping on the lights every day, an office space, those pesky office supplies that someone might actually need,
or stuff and materials like logoed stuff, right? Because as an owner, you want to be logoed up wherever you go.
The key, I think, with any of that, when a franchise sets up those dollars, is to make sure that you have the flexibility to learn and begin operating the business as the plan tells you to do so. Because in any opportunity that you have to scale back, or you don't have enough money, or something happens, we as humans typically get freaked out. Oh my gosh. So the goal is to make sure that you're prepared for the off chance that an air conditioning unit breaks in your retail facility, or the van you decided to buy, not a brand new one, you bought a used one, now the carburetor goes out. And yes, I know what a carburetor is. So those are things that the working capital may or may not have included in it when it's put by the franchise. And
it's why, in general, when you see in franchising the stats of after 4 or 5 years, almost 90% of franchise businesses are still open and operating.
Yes.
And it's about a third of that with a startup.
Correct.
And a big piece of that is just that, right? You don't want to sit there like month 2 and go, month 1
I'm
wasn't
out of money.
Right. I thought month 1 I was going to break the record for revenue in the first month. Like, oopsie.
And as a small business owner, like probably a lot of our viewers are, they've experienced that. And if they had gone back and said, hey, if I had known that I needed X amount of dollars versus Y amount of dollars, the success of my business might have been better.
It's a great question. We tell our clients when they're vetting the franchise and they get a chance to talk to franchise owners, is sometimes even say, like, hey, would you do this all over again? And every now and then somebody's going to go no, but
I've had a couple of no's.
But even if so, I'm still going to want to know why. But if so, like, I would do it all over again, but I would do this differently. And they're almost always ratting themselves out on some part of the plan, but it's usually they got cheap somewhere.
So when you're working with your clients and you're kind of trying to figure out which brands to show them, which franchises to show, how much do you ask them their comfort on that investment, right? Because some people, I bought my son a car, but I was only comfortable with this type of dollar amount. How often does that drive their decision-making process? That's
a great question, and let's come back to that right after this break here on the Franchising 360 Show. And we are back here on the Franchising 360 Show. We cut to commercial here a few minutes ago with Danielle asking me a question. And of course, I was totally listening, because it's always a good idea to listen to your co-host, and especially when it's your wife. But Danielle, maybe somebody home wasn't listening or they forgot. What was the question you asked me?
So the question was, how often, when you're talking to clients about franchises, how much is that overall investment impacting their decision, right? Like, do you tee it up to say, I've got my answer and we can save that for later, but how often does that impact what you show them?
Oh, it always impacts it, right?
Okay.
I was kind of equated to buying a house, right? If you get a pre-approval for a home loan, like, I got pre-approved for $1 million. Sweet, good for you. Does that mean you have to buy the $1 million house? No. And in most cases, we probably make a good argument that that's not the thing to do, right? But it gives us kind of the cap, right? And then it's, what are you able to do, but then what are you comfortable doing, right? So you have to kind of understand both of those.
Okay, so roll with me on this. So you're talking to Sam. Sam has got plenty of capital to be able to invest. I think a lot of what I hear is, I make X amount of dollars at my job. How often does that play into what I'm willing to invest or not willing to invest?
It absolutely does not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So if I were making $100,000 at my job, that's not going to drive you to say, well, maybe you should look at this franchise or this one.
No.
Okay.
No, not.
I love the direct no's.
No,
Like-
it really does not, because it's not the more you invest does not mean necessarily the more you make.
Okay.
Oftentimes it can be inverse of that.
Okay.
Right. So it really is, but understanding what somebody is capable of, what they're comfortable of doing financially, definitely does, because again, we just don't want people to start off, man, I think I have enough money to make this work. It's not a comfortable space for them to be in.
Right. And it goes back to what we've been talking about with plans and franchises, and why we're here talking about this show is that it's an investment opportunity. And if you're willing to invest in yourself and take that leap, it can be successful. But I'm hearing that you want to make sure that it works for them from that range, right?
Without question, which is a kind of a great segue, right?
Look at me.
How awesome is, because we did have another question that came in. If I'm being honest,
I'm going to get rid of all of these mugs really fast.
They came. We're going to have to order some more. This is why you need operating capital, folks. So
right there.
And these questions kind of came in at the same time,
Okay.
but I wanted to start with what's it cost first, because right.
Dun, dun, dun.
I know. We had Stephanie over in Orlando ask the next question. First is, how much does it cost? Well, what's next? How much can I make?
Oh, the sky's the limit, right? How much money do you want to make, Tim?
I want to make a lot, and then more of a lot.
More
right?
of a
So
lot. Okay.
it is, but
Is that a number?
No, it's not. I could give you a number, but that's, I think, and again, I love these questions because it gives us a chance to answer. It gives us a chance to send these suckers out to people. But really, our whole next episode next week, let's talk about how much money somebody can make.
Okay.
And really within that is like how you've got complete control over what that is.
You want some financial success if I'm going to invest in something, right? Like I don't put $1 out there to not make $1 back.
Right. And you talked about that. Oh, my salary is this. I need to replace that. It's a huge fallacy in the franchising world.
Interesting.
So
I look forward to you describing that to me.
Well, guess what? It'll be next Friday, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. If you out there, you're not allowed. You're not allowed to. If you are friends and family of the show, you do not get to send in a question to get a mug. So, but thefranchising360show.com. Send us your questions. Send us some comments, as long as they're positive. Don't send us the negative. And in the meantime, if you want to learn more, in addition to finding these episodes, past episodes on BizTV.com, check out our Franchising 101 podcast, wherever you get your fun stuff, right? So that is us. So what do you say? Next Friday night, you want to do this again?
I think so. I think I'm contractually bound.
Yes, kind of. And as always.
But I like the next episode, right? So I want to know how much money we can make.
How much money?
Maybe we can find a franchise for us.
That would be awesome.
So fun.
So until next Friday, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, have a great weekend. We'll be back with you next week on the Franchising 360 show. Thanks so much.